My in-laws announced my pregnancy at their anniversary party to distract from their divorce, so I announced their divorce at Christmas dinner. It started with a microphone and a poorly timed drum roll. My in-laws, Edward and Aubrey, were celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary. 30 years. A milestone, sure, deserving of a party, absolutely. What it wasn't deserving of was becoming the launchpad for information that was absolutely not theirs to launch. Braxton, my partner, squeezed my hand as we navigated the crowded room at the country club. Fairy lights twinkled, champagne flutes clinked, and forced smiles were plastered on faces I only vaguely recognized. Braxton's family is large and close-knit, in a way that can feel suffocating if you aren't born into it. I've always tried, genuinely tried, to fit into their boisterous gatherings, their inside jokes, their deeply ingrained traditions. Tonight, though, I was mostly focused on keeping my nausea at bay and politely declining the endless stream of canapés being shoved my way. See, Braxton and I were keeping a secret, a big, life-altering, morning sickness-inducing secret. We were pregnant. It was early, barely past the first trimester, and we hadn't even told our own families yet. We wanted to wait to get past the danger zone, to have it be our asterisk news to share on our own terms when we were ready. Apparently, Edward and Aubrey had other plans. Edward, bless his heart, loves the spotlight. He's a jovial man, booming laugh, always ready with a slightly off-color joke, the kind of dad who thinks he's hilarious even when his kids are groaning internally. Aubrey, on the other hand, is quieter, more reserved but equally social. They're a team, or at least they always seem to be, until tonight. Edward tapped the microphone, the sound echoing through the room, silencing the polite chatter. All right, settle down everyone," his voice boomed. "Aubrey and I have an announcement. A little something extra to celebrate our 3 decades of marital bliss." My stomach dropped. I knew instantly what was coming. I glanced at Braxton, his face frozen in a polite, yet slightly strained smile. He knew too. As if 30 years wasn't enough of a reason to celebrate, Edward continued, beaming, "We're about to become grandparents." He paused for dramatic effect, letting the words sink in, the drum roll starting up from somewhere behind the DJ booth. A cheer erupted. Applause filled the room. People turned to us, beaming, congratulating, reaching out to touch my stomach, which was, thankfully, still flat enough to just look like I'd indulged in too many canapés. I wanted to disappear. Braxton managed a weak smile, pulling me closer to his side. Surprise! Edward roared into the microphone, as if he'd just pulled off the greatest magic trick in history. Aubrey stood beside him, smiling serenely, basking in the reflected glow of her husband's performance. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to grab that microphone and announce something equally shocking, something to steal back the spotlight, to reclaim our asterisk news. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not then. We spent the rest of the evening navigating a sea of well-meaning but suffocating relatives, all wanting to know details we weren't ready to share, offering unsolicited advice, and generally treating me like a communal incubator rather than a person. Braxton and I escaped as soon as we could politely manage, muttering about early mornings and work. The car ride home was silent, thick with unspoken anger and resentment. "They stole it," I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. Braxton gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Yeah," he said, his voice flat. "They did." We went to bed that night, the fairy lights of their anniversary party still flashing behind my eyelids, the drum roll still echoing in my ears. It wasn't just the surprise announcement, though that was bad enough. It was the asterisk way they did it. So performative, so attention-seeking, so utterly devoid of any consideration for how we might feel. It felt like they hadn't just announced our pregnancy, they'd announced ownership of it. And that, more than anything, made my blood run cold. I knew then, simmering in the quiet darkness of our bedroom, that I couldn't let this go. I couldn't just smile and nod and pretend it was okay. They had stolen something precious from us, and somehow, someway, I was going to take something back. I just didn't know what or how yet. Time crawled by. Summer faded into autumn, and my pregnancy progressed, thankfully without major complications. The morning sickness eased, replaced by a general state of exhaustion and a constant, low-level anxiety about everything and nothing. Thanksgiving came and went, a blur of turkey and polite conversation with the in-laws. They were, predictably, thrilled about the baby. Aubrey started knitting tiny, aggressively pastel sweaters. Edward began regaling us with grandpa stories, most of which involved questionable childcare advice from the 1970s. They were present, overly so. Every conversation revolved around the baby. Every gift was baby-related. Every interaction felt like a rehearsal for them taking over our lives the moment the baby arrived. Braxton and I remained polite, distant. We answered their questions with carefully curated vagueness. We accepted their gifts with forced smiles. We were playing the game, but underneath the surface, the resentment was still simmering. Then, a few weeks before Christmas, the opportunity presented itself. I was at Aubrey and Edward's house for a pre-Christmas family dinner. Braxton was working late, thankfully spared from another evening of forced cheer. Aubrey had asked me to help her in the kitchen, a thinly veiled attempt to pry for more baby details, I suspected. As she bustled around, directing me to chop vegetables and stir sauces, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, frowned, and then muttered, "Just ignore that." But it buzzed again and then again. Finally, she sighed and picked it up. "It's just my lawyer," she said, her voice tight, too casual. My ears perked up. Lawyer, Aubrey. She stepped out of the kitchen, presumably to take the call in private. Curiosity, that insidious little beast, gnawed at me. While she was gone, I glanced at her phone, still lying on the counter. A notification was flashing from a messaging app, a snippet of text visible. "Divorce settlement documents are ready." My breath hitched. Divorce? Aubrey and Edward, after 30 years. I felt a jolt, not of sympathy, not really, but of something. Suddenly, the strained smiles at Thanksgiving, the forced cheer, the almost frantic focus on the baby, it all clicked into place. Their anniversary party, the over-the-top pregnancy announcement, it wasn't just Edward being Edward. It was a performance, a distraction, a carefully constructed facade to hide the cracks in their perfect 30-year marriage. And they had used our pregnancy, my pregnancy, as a prop in their charade. The anger, which had been simmering for months, flared into something hotter, sharper. They had stolen our news, our joy, our moment. And they had done it to mask their own crumbling reality. An idea, dark and sharp-edged, began to form in my mind. Christmas was just around the corner. The annual Braxton family Christmas extravaganza was always held at Edward and Aubrey's house. A perfect stage, a captive audience. And I now had the perfect script. I finished chopping the vegetables, my hands moving on autopilot, my mind racing. Aubrey returned to the kitchen, her face carefully composed, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands as she stirred the sauce. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice deceptively sweet. She offered a tight smile. "Just work stuff," she said, too quickly. I nodded, pretending to believe her. But inside, a plan was taking shape. Christmas was coming. And this year, Christmas was going to be interesting. Christmas morning dawned bright and bitterly cold. Snow blanketed the ground, pristine and white, reflecting the pale winter sunlight. Edward and Aubrey's house was, as always, a whirlwind of festive chaos. Children shrieked with delight over mountains of presents. Aunts and uncles gossiped in hushed tones by the fireplace. The scent of pine needles and cinnamon filled the air. It looked, on the surface, like the picture-perfect Christmas. But underneath, I knew the cracks were there, wider and deeper than anyone suspected. Braxton and I arrived, laden with gifts and a carefully constructed facade of our own. I smiled politely at Aubrey, accepted a quick hug from Edward, and navigated the crowded living room, my heart hammering against my ribs. The plan was set. Dinner was served, a traditional Christmas feast of roasted ham, mashed potatoes, and enough gravy to float a small boat. The conversation was light, surface level, mostly focused on the children and their presents. Edward, ever the performer, told a string of increasingly ridiculous Christmas cracker jokes, each met with polite groans and forced laughter. Aubrey was quieter than usual, her smile strained, her eyes darting around the room, avoiding mine. I could feel the tension radiating off her, a silent hum beneath the festive cheer. Finally, after dessert, after the last of the Christmas crackers had been pulled and the paper crowns discarded, Edward stood up, tapping his glass with a spoon, the familiar sound echoing through the room. "All right, everyone," he boomed. "Time for a little Christmas toast?" My stomach clenched. This was it. He launched into a rambling speech about family, love, and the magic of Christmas, his voice thick with forced sentimentality. He raised his glass. "To family," he declared. Everyone echoed the toast, glasses clinking, the festive cheer momentarily genuine. Then, Edward, never one to miss an opportunity for the spotlight, turned to me, a knowing smile spreading across his face. "And speaking of family," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Aubrey and I have another little announcement to make. A Christmas surprise, if you will." My hand tightened around my own glass of sparkling cider. Braxton's eyes met mine, a silent question in their depths. Edward paused, drawing out the suspense, his eyes twinkling. As you all know, he continued, Aubrey and I are thrilled to be welcoming a new member to our family next year. We're so excited to become grandparents, and we just can't wait to meet our little. He trailed off, gesturing towards my stomach with a flourish. He expected applause. He expected cheers. He expected me to smile and play along, to be the grateful recipient of his public blessing again. But this time I was ready. I stood up, my voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the forced festive cheer like a knife. Actually, Edward, I said, my voice clear and calm, I have an announcement too. The room went silent. All eyes turned to me, the festive atmosphere suddenly brittle, expectant. Edward's smile faltered, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. I took a deep breath, the scent of pine needles and cinnamon suddenly cloying, suffocating. Since we're all sharing family news, I continued, my voice gaining strength, I thought it was only fair to let everyone in on another little secret that's been brewing. Aubrey's face paled, her eyes widening, a dawning horror creeping into their depths. She knew. She knew what was coming. I met her gaze, my own unwavering. It seems, I said, my voice ringing with a strange sort of calm, detached satisfaction, that Edward and Aubrey, in addition to becoming grandparents, will also be experiencing another major life change next year. A hush fell over the room, thick and heavy. I paused, letting the silence hang in the air, then delivered the final blow, my voice clear and resonant. They're getting divorced. The silence shattered. Gasps rippled through the room. Utter, stunned disbelief painted across every face. Edward's jaw dropped, his face turning a mottled shade of red. Aubrey's eyes squeezed shut, tears welling, her face crumpling. The festive Christmas scene dissolved into chaos. Whispers erupted, questions flew, and the carefully constructed facade of the Braxton family Christmas shattered into a million pieces, just like theirs had shattered months ago. Braxton put a hand on my arm, his touch grounding me in the swirling chaos. I looked at him, a small, brittle smile playing on my lips. He squeezed my hand back, a flicker of something akin to relief in his eyes. The aftermath was messy. Edward sputtered denials, accusations, then retreated into wounded silence. Aubrey fled the room, sobbing. The aunts and uncles descended into a flurry of panicked whispers and frantic phone calls. The children, bless their innocent hearts, looked confused and scared. Braxton and I slipped away as soon as we could, leaving the wreckage behind us. The car ride home was different this time. Silent, yes, but not thick with resentment. There was a strange sort of lightness in the air, a sense of release. Did we do the right thing? Braxton asked, his voice hesitant. I looked out at the snow-covered landscape, the world outside shimmering in the pale winter light. I don't know, I said honestly, but it felt necessary. It wasn't a clean resolution, it wasn't happy. It was messy, complicated, and probably caused a lot of pain. But it was also honest. They had stolen our truth, our moment, and used it for their own performance. And in return, I had given them back theirs. Maybe it wasn't right, maybe it wasn't kind. But it was, undeniably, fair. And in the tangled web of family dynamics, sometimes, fairness is the closest thing you get to a satisfying resolution. My stepson's mother called accusing me and my husband of abuse, so I checked my stepson's iPad and discovered her manipulation. Is our family safe now? It started with a phone call, the kind that makes your stomach drop before you even answer. It was Virginia, Preston's ex-wife, and the mother of his son, Matthew. I braced myself. Virginia and phone calls were rarely a good combination. Usually, it was about scheduling changes for Matthew, or complaints about Preston's parenting, or just general static. But this time, her voice was different, sharp and cold, laced with a righteous anger that sent shivers down my spine. I'm calling about Matthew, she began, her tone leaving no room for pleasantries. He told me some things that are happening at your house, and frankly, I'm disgusted. My heart started to pound. Matthew was 12, a sweet, quiet kid who was still adjusting to our blended family dynamic. Preston and I had been married for 5 years, and Matthew lived with us every other week. We tried to make our home a safe and welcoming space for him, a refuge from the constant tension between his parents. What things, Virginia? I asked, trying to keep my voice even, though a knot was tightening in my chest. Things that no child should ever have to experience, she spat back. He's being punished unfairly, yelled at. He's scared, Olivia. He's genuinely scared to be at your house. My breath hitched. Punished unfairly, yelled at, scared. Preston was firm, yes, but abusive, absolutely not. He was patient, kind, sometimes maybe too lenient if anything. Virginia, I think you're mistaken, I said, my voice trembling slightly despite my efforts. Preston would never, don't you dare try to defend him, Olivia, she interrupted, her voice rising. Matthew told me. He said Preston screamed at him for spilling juice. He said he was sent to his room without dinner because he didn't finish his chores fast enough. He said you both make him feel unwelcome. Tears welled in my eyes, not just from the accusation but from the sheer injustice of it. Unwelcome. We bent over backwards to make Matthew feel at home. We included him in everything, from family game nights to weekend outings. We listened to him, supported his interests, tried to bridge the gap between two very different households. Virginia, those are normal disciplinary actions, I argued, my voice shaking now. Every parent corrects their child, it's not abuse. Normal, she scoffed. Depriving a child of food is normal. Yelling at him until he cries is normal. Olivia, you need to open your eyes. My son is being abused in your home and I will not stand for it. The phone clicked and the line went dead. I stared at my phone, my hand shaking. Abuse. The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I knew Virginia was prone to exaggeration, to drama, to seeing herself as a victim in every scenario. But this was different. This was a direct accusation, a claim of mistreatment against our child. I found Preston in the living room, reading the newspaper. I held up my phone, my face pale. That was Virginia, I said, my voice barely a whisper. She accused us of abusing Matthew. Preston lowered his newspaper, his brow furrowed. Abusing Matthew. What are you talking about? I recounted the conversation, Virginia's accusations, her anger, her chilling certainty. As I spoke, Preston's face darkened. His jaw clenched and his eyes narrowed. When I finished, he slammed the newspaper onto the coffee table. That's insane, he said, his voice tight with suppressed fury. Abuse? Because I raised my voice when he spilled juice? Because he had to earn his dinner by doing his chores? This is ridiculous. Relief flooded me. Preston was just as outraged as I was. We were on the same page. This was Virginia being Virginia, twisting everyday parenting into something monstrous. I know, I said, taking his hand. But, she sounded so convinced, so angry, I'm worried about what she'll do. Preston sighed, running a hand through his hair. She's just trying to stir up trouble, Olivia, she always does. Don't let her get to you. But it was too late, she had already gotten to me. The seed of doubt, however irrational, had been planted. Later that evening, Matthew arrived for his week with us. He seemed his usual quiet self, maybe a little more withdrawn than usual, but nothing overtly different. We made dinner together, lasagna, his favorite. We talked about his week at school, his upcoming baseball game, his new video game. Everything seemed normal. But beneath the surface, I was watching him, scrutinizing his every word, every gesture. Was he hiding something? Was he masking fear? Was Virginia's poison seeping into our home, poisoning my perception of my own stepson? That night, after Matthew was asleep, Preston and I sat up late, talking in hushed tones in the kitchen. Did you yell at him for spilling juice? I asked, the question feeling heavy and accusatory even to my own ears. Preston looked at me, hurt in his eyes. Olivia, are you serious? He spilled juice at breakfast. I told him to be more careful, that was it. I didn't scream at him. And the chores? I pressed, the doubt still gnawing at me. He didn't finish them before dinner, so I told him he could do them after dinner and then eat. That's called consequences, Olivia. That's parenting. I knew he was right. Logically, I knew Virginia was exaggerating, distorting, lying, but emotionally, her words had taken root. I needed proof. I needed something concrete to silence the insidious whisper of doubt in my mind. And then, I remembered. Matthew's iPad. He used it for schoolwork, for games, for watching videos. He often left it lying around, sometimes even recording by accident. A desperate idea formed in my mind. A breach of privacy, yes, but a necessary measure, I told myself, to protect our family. The next morning, after Matthew left for school, I went into his room. His iPad was on his desk, tucked under a pile of textbooks. My hands trembled as I picked it up, navigating to the recordings app. There were dozens of files, mostly short snippets of classroom lectures and video game audio. I started to scroll, my heart pounding, searching for anything recent, anything that might shed light on Virginia's accusations. And then I saw it. A recording labeled Mom Call, dated just 2 days prior, the day Virginia had called me. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was the answer. I plugged in my headphones, my fingers hovering over the play button. Taking a deep breath, I pressed play. The first sound was Virginia's voice, clear and insistent. Matthew, honey, tell me again what happened at Preston and Olivia's house. There was a pause, then Matthew's hesitant voice, quiet and uncertain. Nothing, Mom. My heart leaped with relief. He was going to tell the truth. He was going to debunk Virginia's lies. But then Virginia spoke again, her tone shifting, becoming coaxing, manipulative. Come on, Matthew, you told me you were upset. You said Preston was mean to you. Tell me what he did. Another pause, longer this time, then Matthew's voice again, still hesitant, but now tinged with a subtle change, a hint of rehearsal. He yelled at me for spilling juice. Yes, honey, he yelled at you, Virginia encouraged, her voice almost purring. He screamed at you, didn't he? Made you feel really bad. Yeah, Matthew mumbled, the uncertainty still present. And what else, Matthew? What else did they do to make you feel unwelcome, to make you feel scared? Silence. Then Virginia's voice again, prompting, guiding, shaping Matthew's responses. Remember what we talked about, the chores? They made you do chores, didn't they? And then they didn't let you eat dinner until they were done. Yeah, Matthew said, his voice now mirroring Virginia's leading questions. I had to do chores, and then I ate late. And how did that make you feel, Matthew? Virginia pressed, the coaching becoming more blatant. Did it make you feel like they were punishing you? Like they didn't want you there? Yeah, Matthew repeated, his voice flat, devoid of genuine emotion. It felt like punishment. Virginia's voice softened, becoming falsely sympathetic. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. See, Matthew, Mommy understands. Mommy knows they're not treating you right. You don't deserve to be treated like that. You deserve to be with someone who loves you and makes you feel safe. The recording went on, Virginia continuing to feed Matthew lines, suggesting emotions, fabricating details, twisting minor disciplinary actions into horrific acts of abuse. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just exaggeration. This was deliberate manipulation, a calculated attempt to poison Matthew against us, to create a false narrative of abuse for her own twisted purposes. I ripped off my headphones, my hands shaking, tears streaming down my face, but this time they were tears of rage. I ran downstairs, finding Preston still working from home in his office. I thrust the iPad at him, my voice choked with emotion. Listen to this, I said, pointing to the mom call recording. Listen to what Virginia is doing to Matthew. Preston took the iPad, his brow furrowed with confusion. He put on the headphones, and I watched his face as he listened, his expression shifting from puzzlement to disbelief to horror to incandescent fury. When the recording ended, he ripped off the headphones, his eyes blazing. That manipulative bitch, he spat, his voice raw with anger. She's coaching him, she's putting words in his mouth, she's trying to turn him against us. I know, I said, my voice trembling. I know. We have to do something, Preston. We can't let her get away with this. We spent the rest of the day in a whirlwind of anger and determination. We listened to the recording again and again, dissecting Virginia's words, Matthew's hesitant responses, the insidious web of lies she was weaving. We made copies of the recording, backing it up on multiple devices, safeguarding it as if it were a piece of vital evidence, which, in a way, it was. We called our lawyer, explaining the situation, sending her the recording. Her response was immediate and unequivocal. This is damning, she said, her voice sharp with professional assessment. This is evidence of parental alienation, of manipulation, of potentially even emotional abuse of Matthew by his mother. We can use this, Olivia. We will use this. Hope surged through me, a fierce, protective hope for Matthew, for our family, for the truth to finally prevail. We decided to confront Virginia, not with anger or accusations, but with cold, hard evidence. We arranged a meeting, a neutral location, a coffee shop, just the three of us. Virginia arrived, radiating self-righteous indignation, her eyes flashing with practiced fury. I want to know what you're doing to my son, she began, her voice tight with manufactured outrage. I will not tolerate, Preston held up a hand, cutting her off. Virginia, we know what you're doing, he said, his voice low and steady, devoid of emotion. Virginia's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? He pulled out his phone, tapping on the screen. We listened to your call with Matthew, he said, his voice flat. We know you coached him. We know you put those words in his mouth. Virginia's face paled, her carefully constructed anger faltering for the first time. She tried to bluff, to deny, to deflect. That's a lie, she stammered, her voice losing its conviction. Matthew told me those things. He was genuinely upset. Preston pressed play on his phone, the recording filling the quiet coffee shop, Virginia's voice echoing back at her, her manipulative words laid bare for all to hear. As the recording played, Virginia's bravado crumbled. Her face flushed crimson, then drained to a sickly white. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but there was none. When the recording ended, silence hung in the air, broken only by the clatter of coffee cups and the muffled conversations of other patrons. Preston turned off his phone, his gaze unwavering, fixed on Virginia's pale, defeated face. Care to explain, Virginia? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Virginia didn't speak. She couldn't. The truth, amplified by her own voice, had stripped her bare, exposing her manipulative heart for what it truly was. The silence stretched, thick and heavy with unspoken accusations and shattered illusions. Finally, Virginia stood abruptly, pushing back her chair with a harsh scrape. You're disgusting," she hissed, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and shame. "You're spying on my son. You're invading his privacy." She turned and fled, her carefully constructed facade completely shattered, leaving Preston and me sitting in stunned silence. The weight of her lies finally lifted, replaced by a fragile sense of victory and a profound sadness for the damage she had inflicted, not just on us, but on her own son. The aftermath wasn't neat or easy. Virginia didn't suddenly become a reasonable co-parent. She retreated, lashing out with angry texts and veiled threats, but the recording had given us a shield, a weapon against her manipulation. We used it, not to punish her, but to protect Matthew. We shared it with his therapist, who confirmed our fears of parental alienation and helped us develop strategies to counter Virginia's influence. We didn't pursue legal action, not immediately. Our priority was Matthew, to reassure him, to validate his feelings, to create a space where he felt safe and loved, regardless of Virginia's poisonous words. It took time, patience, and a lot of love, but slowly, Matthew began to open up, to trust us, to see through Virginia's manipulation. He knew, on some level, that his mother had tried to use him, had tried to turn him against us. It was a painful realization for a child, but also a liberating one. The iPad recording, initially a desperate act of self-defense, became an unexpected catalyst for healing, for truth, for a fragile but real sense of family finally solidifying, built not on lies and manipulation, but on honesty, love, and the quiet strength of knowing the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. My sister stole my identity and ruined my credit to pay my parents' secret debt. I confronted her and found that she wasn't malicious, just deeply misguided. It started subtly, a notification from Credit Karma about a new account opened in my name. Initially, I dismissed it as some kind of error. I'm pretty careful with my credit, borderline paranoid actually, ever since my ex ran up a bunch of cards and left me holding the bag. But still, I logged in, just to be sure. And there it was, plain as day, a store credit card for some online furniture retailer I'd never even heard of. I froze, staring at the screen. My first thought was identity theft, some random scammer. I changed all my passwords, flagged my credit reports, the whole 9 yards. Then, a few days later, another notification. This time, a personal loan from some online lender. The amount was bigger, significantly bigger. My heart started hammering in my chest. This wasn't random anymore. This was targeted. I dug deeper, pulling up my full credit report, and that's when I saw it all. A pattern. It wasn't just the furniture card and the personal loan. There were several other smaller things too. Things that could easily be missed if you weren't actively looking. A phone contract, another store card, even a payday loan I shuddered just seeing the name of it. All opened within the last couple of months. All in my name. All with my social security number, my date of birth, the whole shebang. The address listed on most of them was familiar, too familiar. It was my childhood address, the one my sister, Kayla, still lives at with our parents. A cold dread started to creep into my stomach. It couldn't be Kayla, could it? My sister. We've always been close, well, as close as sisters can be. We've had our squabbles, sure, the usual sibling rivalry stuff growing up, but nothing serious. We're adults now. She knows how hard I work, how meticulously I manage my finances. She knows I'm saving for a down payment on a house, that my credit is practically sacred to me. The thought of her deliberately doing this, of using my identity, felt impossible, but the facts were staring me right in the face. The address. The timing. It all pointed to her. I could call her, confront her, demand an explanation. But something held me back. Maybe it was disbelief, maybe it was morbid curiosity, maybe it was just plain anger brewing and telling me to wait. Instead of calling Kayla, I called the furniture store. Pretending to be me, I asked about the account, the shipping address, the details. And just like that, the pieces clicked into place. The furniture was shipped to my parents' house, to Kayla. It was undeniably her. The anger finally boiled over, hot and sharp, but mixed with it, a strange sense of calculation. Reporting Kayla, calling the police, shutting everything down that would be the normal reaction, the responsible reaction. But normal and responsible suddenly felt unsatisfying. It felt too clean, too quick. Kayla had clearly put some effort into this. She'd planned it out, she'd been methodical, and for what? A new couch, a shopping spree, whatever her endgame was, it felt. Small, petty, and frankly, I wanted to see how far she'd go. I wanted to understand the depth of this betrayal, the extent of her desperation, or whatever twisted logic was driving her. So I did nothing. I flagged the accounts for fraud, yes, to protect myself from further damage, but I didn't shut them down completely. I let them linger like bait. I decided to watch, to wait, to see what Kayla would do next. It felt wrong, I know. Like I was playing with fire, risking my own financial well-being for some twisted sense of justice. But I couldn't shake the feeling that just reporting her wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't explain anything. It wouldn't make her understand the gravity of what she'd done. And maybe, just maybe, letting her continue, letting her dig herself a little deeper, would be the only way to truly make her see the hole she was creating, not just for me, but for herself. I know Reddit probably thinks I'm crazy, that I should lawyer up, report her, cut her off, and maybe you're right. But right now, all I feel is this cold, simmering anger and a strange, unsettling curiosity to see just how deep this rabbit hole goes. I'll update when. Well, when something happens. I'm not sure what I'm expecting, but I have a feeling this is far from over. Update 1. It's been a few weeks, and things have escalated. Subtlety, apparently, is not Kayla's strong suit. Or maybe she just figured she'd gotten away with it and could be bolder. Whatever the reason, the notifications kept coming. Bigger loans now, credit cards with higher limits, each one a fresh stab of betrayal. The furniture store account, at least, seemed to have gone quiet after the initial purchase. But the debt was mounting. I pulled my credit report again, and it was sickening. My carefully cultivated score was plummeting. Late payments were starting to register. Collection agencies were beginning to sniff around. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash, except I was the car, and Kayla was gleefully behind the wheel, foot pressed firmly on the gas. The financial damage was real and starting to feel scary, but the emotional damage was worse. Every notification, every credit alert felt like a personal insult, a deliberate act of malice. I still hadn't contacted Kayla. Part of me was still clinging to this insane plan of letting her unravel, of waiting for her to trip over her own lies. Another part of me, the saner part, was screaming at me to stop playing games and just end it. But then, something shifted. One evening, my mom called. It was a casual, just checking in kind of call, but her voice sounded strained. After the usual pleasantries, she hesitantly asked, "Emma, honey, is everything okay with you financially?" My stomach dropped. How did she know? Had Kayla confessed? Had my parents somehow stumbled upon the credit reports? "Yeah, Mom, everything's fine. Why do you ask?" I tried to keep my voice light, casual. "Oh, no reason really," she said, too quickly. "Just, Kayla was saying something about needing to borrow some money." My blood ran cold. "Borrow money from who?" I asked, my voice sharper now. "Well, from us, from Dad and me," she said. "She said you were having some trouble, some unexpected expenses, and she wanted to help you out." My jaw clenched so tight it ached. Kayla was using my stolen identity to get loans, and then using *me* as an excuse to get money from our parents. The audacity was breathtaking. It wasn't just about furniture or shopping sprees anymore. This was a calculated, manipulative scheme that was now dragging our parents into it. "Mom," I said, my voice tight with suppressed anger. "Kayla is lying. I am not having any financial trouble. And if Kayla needs money, it's definitely not to help me." My mom was silent for a moment. "Are you sure, honey?" She seemed quite insistent. She said it was important, a real emergency. "Mom," I repeated, my voice firm, "Kayla is not telling you the truth. Do not give her any money. Whatever she's saying, it's a lie." The conversation ended awkwardly, my mom clearly confused and worried, but the call had changed things for me. It wasn't just about me and Kayla anymore. It was about our parents, about their savings, about Kayla's increasingly reckless behavior. My little experiment, my twisted sense of justice, was starting to feel dangerous, irresponsible. I still didn't want to just report her, not yet, but I knew I had to intervene, and soon. I needed to understand why. Why was Kayla doing this? Was she in some kind of trouble? Was she being pressured? Or was she just malicious? The thought stung, a deep, sickening ache of betrayal. I spent the next day wrestling with what to do. I considered confronting her directly, setting up a meeting, demanding answers. But I knew Kayla. She was good at deflection, at manipulation, at playing the victim. A direct confrontation would likely just end in tears and denials, and I'd be no closer to the truth. So I decided on a different approach. I decided to play Kayla's game, but on my terms. I decided to let her think she was still getting away with it, but to start tightening the noose slowly, deliberately. I started gathering evidence, documenting everything. Credit reports, loan applications, shipping addresses, even screenshots of Kayla's social media, which, unsurprisingly, was suddenly filled with pictures of new furniture, new clothes, new everything. I wanted to build a case, not just to report her, but to understand her, to finally force her to confront what she was doing. And I had a plan. It was risky. It was still morally gray. But it was the only way I could see to get to the bottom of this without just resorting to brute force. I was going to let Kayla keep digging, but I was also going to start digging myself, right beside her, until we both reached the bottom of this mess together, whether she liked it or not. Update 2, the confrontation wasn't planned, not exactly. It was more of a controlled detonation. I'd spent the last week meticulously preparing. I'd compiled all the evidence, organized it, and even consulted with a lawyer, just to be sure I wasn't completely insane and about to inadvertently commit some kind of fraud myself. The lawyer, surprisingly, hadn't told me to immediately report Kayla. She'd listened to my story, raised an eyebrow at my unconventional approach, but ultimately advised me to proceed with caution, to document everything, and to be ready to pull the trigger and report her if things escalated too far. Her words, ironically, emboldened me. I felt like I was finally in control, finally taking charge of a situation that had felt increasingly chaotic and out of my hands. I knew I needed to talk to Kayla, but I wanted to do it on my terms, in a way that would force her to be honest, to confront the reality of her actions. So I invited her for lunch. Casual, sisterly lunch, just like old times. Except, of course, nothing was like old times anymore. She arrived at the restaurant, a trendy little place we used to frequent in college, looking nervous. Too cheerful, too bright, like she was trying too hard to project normalcy. She was wearing a new dress, I noticed, a designer brand I knew she couldn't afford, not on her receptionist's salary. I didn't say anything, just smiled and hugged her, trying to mirror her forced cheerfulness. We made small talk, the usual sisterly banter, catching up on work, parents, the weather. It was surreal, like we were acting out a scene from a play, both of us knowing the real drama was lurking just beneath the surface. Then, over lukewarm salads and forced smiles, I dropped the bomb. "Kayla," I said, my voice calm and steady but with an edge I knew she'd recognize. "We need to talk about my credit report." Her fork clattered against her plate. Her forced smile faltered, then vanished completely. Her eyes widened, a flicker of panic in their depths. "Your credit report? What about it?" she stammered, avoiding my gaze. "Oh, you know," I said, leaning back in my chair, letting my voice take on a casual, almost conversational tone. "Just noticed a few interesting things. A new furniture store card, a couple of personal loans. Funny thing is, I don't remember applying for any of them." Silence descended between us, thick and heavy. Kayla's face had gone pale. She was staring at her salad like it held the secrets of the universe. "Emma, I don't know what you're talking about," she mumbled, her voice barely above a whisper. The denial was weak, pathetic, and honestly, it just made me angrier. "Kayla," I said again, my voice hardening, "don't insult my intelligence, I know it's you. The address, the timing, the furniture. It all points to you." Her eyes finally met mine, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something else besides panic, something that looked like shame, or maybe guilt, or maybe just plain fear of getting caught. "Okay, fine," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It's me, but it's not what you think." "Oh, really? Enlighten me, Kayla, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you stole my identity and are racking up debt in my name. For funsies, maybe?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't soften. Not yet. "It's not for fun," she sobbed, her voice choked with emotion. I needed the money." "Needed it for what, Kayla? A new designer dress every week? Because that's what your Instagram is screaming." Her tears flowed freely now, streaming down her face, blurring her mascara. "No, it's not. It's not for me, it's for Mom and Dad." I stared at her, my anger momentarily eclipsed by confusion. "Mom and Dad, what are you talking about?" She took a shaky breath, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. They're in trouble, Emma. Really bad trouble." And then, the dam broke. She poured it all out, a torrent of words, tears, and confessions. It turned out our parents were drowning in debt. Dad's business had been struggling for years, and they'd been secretly borrowing money, taking out second mortgages, maxing out credit cards, just to keep afloat. Kayla had found out by accident, overhearing a hushed phone call between them. She'd panicked. She'd seen them spiraling, and in her misguided, utterly insane logic, she'd decided to help by stealing my identity. By taking out loans in my name, hoping to funnel the money to our parents, to bail them out, to save them from whatever financial disaster she imagined was looming. The furniture, the clothes, the shopping sprees, those were distractions, she claimed. Things she bought to throw off suspicion, to make it look like she was just being frivolous, not desperately trying to hide a massive, ill-conceived plan. It was insane. Utterly, completely, mind-bogglingly insane. And yet, as she spoke, as the tears streamed down her face, as the raw desperation in her voice filled the air, a strange shift happened within me. The anger didn't vanish, not completely, but it softened just a little, replaced by something else. Something that felt a lot like pity. Not for Kayla, not exactly, but for all of us. For our parents, for Kayla, for myself. For the tangled mess of family secrets, financial desperation, and utterly misguided attempts at love and loyalty that had led us to this point. The lunch ended with tears, apologies, and a shaky, fragile truce. I didn't report her, not yet. I told her she needed to confess to our parents, to tell them everything, to face the consequences of her actions. I told her she needed to get help, professional help, to understand why she thought this was a good idea, why she felt so desperate, so responsible, so utterly lost. She agreed, tearfully, desperately. Whether she actually will, I don't know. But for now, the rabbit hole has reached its bottom. It's not a happy ending, not by a long shot. But maybe, just maybe, it's a beginning. A beginning of something different. A beginning of honesty, of healing, of finally untangling the mess that our family has become. I'll update again if there's anything more to tell. But for now, I just feel exhausted and strangely, heartbreakingly sad. My brother-in-law blamed my son for a car accident after texting while driving, and my sister defended him. How do I move forward now? It's still sinking in, the whole mess. Honestly, I'm reeling a bit. My brother-in-law, Bruce, borrowed my car yesterday. It's not just any car, it's the family car, a decent SUV we use for everything, school runs, grocery trips, family outings, you name it. Bruce needed to pick up some stuff for his house from a town about an hour away, and his own car was in the shop. Seemed simple enough. He's family, right? We help each other out. Then I got the call. It was Bruce, his voice shaky, almost frantic. He said he'd been in an accident. My stomach dropped. My first thought was, is he okay? Is anyone hurt? He assured me he was fine, thankfully, and the other driver was too, mostly just shaken up. But then he launched into the story of what happened, and that's where things started to get weird. He said it was Matthias's fault. My son Matthias, he's 16, just got his learner's permit and is itching to drive. Bruce claimed Matthias had been messing with the car settings earlier that week when we were all at their house for Sunday dinner. Apparently, Matthias was showing Bruce's son, Ezra, the car's features, and somehow, Bruce said, he must have messed with the braking system or something with the steering. He was vague, but kept repeating that it was definitely a car malfunction and it had to be because of Matthias. I was floored. Matthias, my Matthias, he's a good kid, responsible, maybe a little too cautious sometimes. He's obsessed with cars, yes, but he's careful. He wouldn't intentionally mess with something like that, especially not something safety-related. But Bruce was so insistent. He sounded genuinely upset, not just about the accident, but about this supposed sabotage. He painted a picture of Matthias being reckless, showing off, not thinking about the consequences. My sister, Lila, Bruce's wife, was on the phone too, adding her 2 cents. She sounded stressed, but mostly worried about Bruce. She kept saying things like, "Poor Bruce, he's so shaken up," and, "It's just lucky no one was seriously hurt." No one even mentioned asking if I was okay or worried about my car, just about Bruce being shaken up. It was grating. The thing is, my car has a dashcam. It's one of those newer models that records front and rear, and it's always on when the car is running. I installed it after someone dinged my door in a parking lot and drove off without a word. Never thought it would be used for something like this. It's a little embarrassing to admit, but I almost forgot it was even there until Bruce started blaming Matthias. Suddenly, a little voice in my head whispered, "Check the dashcam asterisk," but part of me didn't want to. It's Bruce, my brother-in-law. We're family. I wanted to believe him, to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Matthias had accidentally fiddled with something, and Bruce was just trying to make sense of a scary situation. Confronting family, especially over something like a car accident, is always messy. It can create rifts that last for years. But the thought of Matthias being blamed for something he didn't do, something that could have serious repercussions, that sat really wrong with me. So here I am, sitting at my kitchen table, laptop open, staring at the tiny file icon for the dashcam footage. I haven't clicked play yet. Part of me is terrified of what I might find, or rather, what I might not find. What if the footage is inconclusive? What if it somehow does show something that could be misinterpreted as a car malfunction? Then I'm back to square one, with a damaged car, a brother-in-law who feels wronged, and my son potentially under a cloud of suspicion. But then the other part of me, the protective mom part, kicks in. Matthias is a good kid. He deserves to have his name cleared if he's being wrongly accused. And honestly, Bruce's story, it just doesn't quite add up. The vagueness about the car malfunction, the immediate jump to blaming Matthias, Lila's almost dismissive attitude towards the actual accident, and focusing solely on Bruce's feelings. It all feels off. So Reddit, here I am, about to watch this video and potentially open a can of worms. Tell me, am I being crazy for even doubting Bruce? Should I just let it go, chalk it up to a misunderstanding, and deal with the insurance? Or am I right to want to know the truth, no matter how messy it might be? I'm honestly torn and a little scared to press play. Wish me luck or maybe some sense. I'll update when I know more. Okay, deep breaths, I watched it. I finally clicked play and… wow. I feel a mix of things right now. Anger, betrayal, a cold, sinking feeling in my gut, and a fierce, protective surge for Matthias. The dashcam footage is crystal clear. It starts a few minutes before the accident. Bruce is driving, definitely him. You can see his profile clearly. The road is dry, visibility is good, it's broad daylight. He's driving at a reasonable speed, nothing erratic at first. Then, about a minute before the impact, his phone lights up on the dashboard mount. He glances down, then down again, then he picks up the phone. He's scrolling, tapping, clearly texting. He's not just glancing, he's fully engaged with his phone, and then it happens. He doesn't even brake, he doesn't swerve, he just drifts into the other lane. There's a horn, loud and sharp, from another car coming the other way. And then, bam. Impact. The car shakes violently, the airbags deploy. The recording cuts off shortly after that, presumably when the ignition was turned off. There's absolutely nothing, nothing asterisk in that footage that suggests a car malfunction. No sudden braking, no steering issues, no warning lights flashing, nothing. Just Bruce, completely engrossed in his phone, driving straight into another car. And then, after causing an accident because of his own blatant negligence, he has the audacity to blame my 16-year-old son. Rage, that's what I feel now. Pure, unadulterated rage. How dare he? How dare he try to pin this on Matthias, to make my son the scapegoat for his own irresponsible, dangerous behavior. And Lila, going along with it, not even questioning it, just rushing to Bruce's defense. It's sickening. I called Matthias right away. He was at a friend's house, studying for finals. I told him to come home, that I needed to talk to him. He sounded worried, but he came right over. When he walked in, I hugged him tight. He looked confused. "Mom, what's wrong? Is everything okay?" I took him to the kitchen, sat him down, and showed him the footage. I didn't say anything at first, just let him watch. I watched his face as he saw Bruce texting, as he saw the crash. His brow furrowed, then his eyes widened in disbelief. When the video ended, he looked up at me, his expression a mix of shock and hurt. He blamed me?" Matthias asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, honey, he did. He said you messed with the car, that it was your fault the accident happened." My voice trembled with anger as I said the words. Matthias was silent for a moment, then he shook his head slowly. That's not true, I would never. I was just showing Ezra I didn't touch anything important." He trailed off, his eyes welling up. "I know, baby, I know you didn't. I believe you." I reached across the table and took his hand. "That's why I wanted you to see this. To know that I know you wouldn't do anything like that." He squeezed my hand tightly. "What are you going to do? That's the question, isn't it? What am I going to do? I can't just let this slide. I can't let Bruce get away with blaming my son for his own reckless actions. And I can't ignore the fact that he damaged my car, potentially seriously, and lied about it to my face and to my sister. I think I need to confront them. Both of them. Bruce and Lila. I need to show them the footage to make them see the truth. But I'm also dreading it. This is going to be a huge family blow-up. It's going to be messy and uncomfortable and probably really, really ugly. But I can't just stand by and let Matthias be unfairly blamed. He deserves better than that. We both do. I'm going to call Lila. Now, wish me strength, Reddit. This is going to be a tough conversation. Update to follow, once I've had it, and hopefully haven't burned all bridges in the process. Well, the conversation happened, and it was about as pleasant as sticking needles in my eyes. I called Lila first. I tried to stay calm, to keep my voice even, but honestly, anger was bubbling up inside me like a volcano ready to erupt. "Lila, we need to talk about the car accident yesterday." "Oh, Claire," she sighed, sounding weary. "I know, it was awful. Bruce is still really shaken up. And the car—" "Lila," I interrupted, cutting her off before she could launch into another sympathy parade for Bruce. "I've seen the dashcam footage." Silence. A long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out what I meant. Dashcam footage, she finally stammered. Yes, Lila, the dashcam footage in my car, the one that recorded the entire accident. I paused, letting the words sink in. And it clearly shows Bruce texting and driving, Lila. He was looking at his phone, not the road. That's why he crashed. Not because of any car malfunction and certainly not because of Matthias. More silence. Then, a defensive tone crept into Lila's voice. Now, Claire, you can't just jump to conclusions. Dashcams can be misleading. Maybe he was just checking the GPS or changing the song. Lila, be serious. He was texting, you can see it on the screen. He was looking down at his phone for a solid minute before he crashed. There's no mistaking it. My voice was rising now, the calm facade starting to crack. Well, maybe he was distracted, but Matthias still could have done something to the car, Bruce said. Lila, stop, just stop. Are you really going to defend this? Are you really going to stand by and let your brother blame my son for something he clearly didn't do, when you know, asterisk, it was Bruce's fault? The anger finally broke through, my voice sharp and accusatory. Don't talk to me like that, Claire, she snapped back, her own voice hardening. Bruce is my brother, and he's been through a lot. He's stressed, he's tired, he was probably just not thinking straight after the accident. Not thinking straight, he was texting and driving, Lila. It's not rocket science. It's dangerous and irresponsible, and he could have seriously hurt himself or someone else. And then he lies about it and tries to blame my son, and you're defending him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He didn't lie, she protested weakly. He just panicked. He didn't want you to be mad at him. Mad at him? I practically yelled into the phone. Lila, my car is damaged. He could have been killed, and he tried to shift the blame onto Matthias. Of course I'm mad, I'm furious. The argument devolved from there. It became a shouting match, accusations flying back and forth, old grievances dredged up, family loyalty pitted against common sense and basic decency. Lila kept circling back to Bruce's supposed distress, his shaken state, his good intentions, completely ignoring the fact that he was demonstrably in the wrong and actively trying to deflect blame. It was infuriating and deeply, deeply disappointing. Eventually, I hung up. I couldn't take it anymore. My head was pounding, my chest tight with anger and frustration. I felt disconnected, like I was looking at Lila through a distorted lens, seeing a side of her I hadn't realized existed, a blind, unwavering loyalty that trumped truth and fairness. Then I called Bruce. I decided to go straight to the point, no beating around the bush. Bruce, I saw the dashcam footage. His reaction was different from Lila's, not defensive, not dismissive, just silence, a heavy, guilty silence. Bruce, I prompted, my voice low and dangerous. Yeah, he finally mumbled. I figured you might. You figured I might see the video that clearly shows you were texting and driving and caused an accident, and you still tried to blame it on my son. The anger was back, raw and potent. Look, Claire, I messed up, okay. I wasn't thinking. I was stressed. I had a lot on my mind. Stressed? So being stressed gives you a free pass to drive recklessly and then lie about it? I was incredulous. No, it's not like that, he stammered, his voice rising in pitch. It was just a split second. I just glanced at my phone and then it happened. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to text and drive. You didn't mean to cause an accident. You didn't mean to lie and blame my son. I listed off the accusations, each word like a punch. I panicked, he repeated, the same weak excuse Lila had used. I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want you to be mad. Mad, Bruce, you wrecked my car and tried to frame my son. Mad doesn't even begin to cover it. I was losing it again, my voice shaking with rage. And you're still not even apologizing. You're still making excuses. I am sorry, okay? I'm sorry about the car. I'm sorry about Matthias. I'm sorry I messed up. His apology sounded hollow, forced, like he was just saying the words to shut me up. Sorry isn't enough, Bruce, I said, my voice cold and hard. Sorry doesn't fix my car. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that you lied and tried to hurt Matthias. Sorry doesn't even begin to make up for this. What do you want me to do, Claire? He pleaded, his voice laced with desperation. What do you want from me? I want you to take responsibility for your actions, Bruce, I said, my voice firm. I want you to tell the truth to Lila, to Matthias, to everyone. And I want you to fix my car, every single dent, every single scratch. And then, maybe, just maybe, we can start to talk about forgiveness. But right now, Bruce, I'm done talking to you. I hung up, the line dead in my hand. I felt drained, exhausted, but also strangely resolute. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was now mixed with a sense of grim determination. I had seen the truth, I had confronted them with it, And now, it was time to deal with the consequences. No more backing down, no more pretending everything was okay. It was time to face the mess head on, and to make sure that Bruce and Lila understood that actions have consequences, and that family loyalty doesn't excuse blatant dishonesty and irresponsibility. The next update will be about what happens next and how we navigate this family minefield. It's definitely not going to be easy, but I'm ready to fight for what's right, for Matthias and for myself.
My sister always said she raised me after Mom died, but home videos revealed it was my dad. Now she's crying and trying to make me out to be the bad guy. It's always been the story in our family, etched in stone as far as I could tell. My sister, Jessica, she raised me. Mom died when I was just a kid, 7 years old, a blurry age in my memory now. Jessica was 17, practically an adult herself. Everyone says it, aunts, uncles, family friends, even dad sometimes, though he's always a bit quieter about it. Jessica stepped up, they'd say. She was like a second mother to you, Shane, and I believed it. I mean, why wouldn't I? It's a comforting narrative, isn't it? A tragedy turned into a testament to sibling love and resilience. Jessica played the part perfectly too, always reminding me of sacrifices she made, teenage years cut short, responsibilities shouldered. I felt this constant undercurrent of gratitude towards her, a debt I could never truly repay. But lately, things have felt off. It's not anything specific, just a nagging feeling, like a loose thread in a tapestry that's been woven for years. My memories of that time are hazy, fragmented. Grief does that, I guess. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, a different feeling surfaces, a sense of loneliness. Not the grief-stricken loneliness of losing Mom, but a more persistent, everyday kind. A feeling of being unseen, maybe. It's hard to articulate. Jessica and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're close in a way, bound by shared trauma and family history. But there's also a distance, a sort of unspoken hierarchy. She's always been the responsible one, the older sister who knows best. I've always been, well, just Shane, the kid she raised. Recently, Dad was cleaning out the attic and unearthed a box of old home videos, VHS tapes, mostly dusty relics from a bygone era. He brought them over last weekend, a nostalgic smile on his face. "Thought you might want to see these," he said, handing me the box. "Lots of Mom in there, and you too when you were little." I hadn't thought much about them until tonight. I was feeling restless, that familiar unease bubbling up. I dug out our old VHS player, hooked it up, and started going through the tapes. Birthday parties, Christmases, summer vacations. Mom, laughing, smiling, vibrant. It was bittersweet, beautiful, and painful all at once. Then I got to the tapes from after she got sick, and after she was gone. And that's when things started to unravel. The story I'd always been told, the story I'd always believed, began to crumble frame by frame. I'm still reeling, honestly. I don't even know how to process what I've seen. I feel angry, confused, betrayed, maybe all of the above. I need to sort through this. I need to understand what really happened. And I think maybe I need to confront Jessica. I don't know where to even begin. Update 1: I spent most of last night and this morning watching those tapes. It was like peeling back layers of a carefully constructed lie, revealing something raw and uncomfortable underneath. The early tapes, before Mom got sick, are filled with warmth and laughter. Jessica and I, little kids, running around, Mom chasing us, Dad filming, his voice booming with affection. It's idyllic, almost too perfect. Then the tapes shift. The colors seem duller, the laughter less frequent. Mom is there, but she looks tired, thinner. Her smile doesn't quite reach her eyes anymore, and then, abruptly, she's gone from the videos altogether. The tapes after Mom's death are stark. That's the only word for it. The house feels empty, even when Jessica and Dad and I are in the frame. There's a quietness, a stillness that's almost suffocating. And Jessica, she's there, yes, but she's not parenting me, not in the way the story always claimed. She's in the background mostly. Teenage Jessica, lost in her own grief, her own world. She's often in her room, door closed. When she is in the common areas, she's detached. She's on the phone, talking to friends. She's listening to music, headphones in. She's reading, lost in a book. She's rarely interacting with me. And when she does, it's often brief, almost perfunctory. "Shane, dinner's on the table. Shane, do your homework." It's the bare minimum, functional, not nurturing. The videos show who was actually there for me. Dad, it's always Dad. He's in every frame, his face etched with sadness, but his actions filled with love. He's making breakfast, packing my lunch, helping me with homework, reading me bedtime stories. He's taking me to the park, to baseball games, to the grocery store. He's the one who's present, who's engaged, who's holding it all together. He looks exhausted, heartbroken, but he's asterisk there asterisk. There's one video that gutted me. It's Christmas, maybe 6 months after Mom died. I'm sitting on the floor by the Christmas tree, surrounded by unwrapped presents, looking lost and small. Jessica is in the background, on the phone, laughing, oblivious. Dad is kneeling beside me, his arm around me, pointing out a toy truck, trying to coax a smile out of me. He's trying so hard. And Jessica, she's just not there. Not really. It's not that Jessica was cruel or malicious in the videos. She wasn't. She was just absent, emotionally and often physically. She was a grieving teenager, yes, but she wasn't the selfless caregiver, the second mother that everyone made her out to be. The videos don't lie, they show the truth. And the truth is, Dad raised me. He was the one who stepped up. Jessica, she was just gone in her own way. I feel betrayed by Jessica for perpetuating this false narrative, by my family for going along with it, by myself for believing it for so long. It's like my entire understanding of my childhood, of my relationship with Jessica, has been built on a foundation of sand. I called Jessica this afternoon. I told her I'd watched the home videos. I told her what I'd seen. There was silence on the other end of the line for a long time. Then she said, her voice tight, "What are you saying, Shane?" "I'm saying," I said, my voice shaking, "that the story isn't true, Jess. You didn't raise me. Dad did." "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "Of course I helped. I was there. I took care of you." "You were there," I conceded. "But you weren't taking care of me, Jess. You were living your own life. And that's okay. Teenagers grieve too. But don't pretend you were some kind of saint sacrificing everything for me. The videos show the truth, Jess, and it's not what you've always said." She started to cry then, a choked, angry sob. "How can you say that? How can you accuse me of lying?" "I'm not accusing you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm just seeing the truth, Jess, for the first time, and it's not what I expected." The line went dead. She hung up. I don't know what happens now. I don't know if she'll call back. I don't know if she'll ever admit the truth. But I know I can't pretend anymore. I can't go back to believing the lie, not after seeing what I've seen, not after finally understanding the loneliness I felt all those years ago. Update 2. It's been a few days since I confronted Jessica with the videos. She hasn't called back. She hasn't texted. Silence. It's almost worse than if she had yelled or argued. This icy silence feels like a wall, impenetrable and cold. Dad called yesterday. He sounded hesitant, almost apologetic. "Jess called," he said quietly. "She's upset, Shane." "Upset," I repeated, the word feeling hollow. "Dad, I saw the videos. She lied. For years. She's saying you're misinterpreting them," he continued, his voice strained. "That you're being unfair." "Unfair?" I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Is it unfair to want the truth, Dad? Is it unfair to feel hurt when I realize my sister has been rewriting my childhood?" He sighed heavily. "She was young, Shane, 17 years old, grieving her mother, trying to cope. Maybe she embellished things a little. Maybe she wanted to feel like she was helping, like she was being strong." "Embellished a little?" I said, my voice rising. "Dad, she created a whole narrative. She built her entire identity around being my second mother. And it's not true. It's a lie." "Shane, please," he pleaded. "Don't fight with your sister. Not now, not after everything we've been through." "But Dad," I argued, "don't you see? This asterisk is asterisk about everything we've been through. It's about Mom. It's about grief. It's about honesty. Don't you want to know the truth too?" He was silent again, longer this time. Then he said, his voice barely a whisper, "Maybe some truths are better left buried, Shane." That stung. It really stung. Even Dad, the one who was actually there, who actually raised me, is willing to perpetuate the lie to protect Jessica, to keep the peace. It feels like everyone is prioritizing Jessica's feelings over mine, over the truth itself. I'm wrestling with so much right now. Part of me wants to just let it go, to bury the videos, to pretend I never saw them, to go back to the comfortable lie. It would be easier, it would avoid conflict, it would keep the family peace. But another part of me, it can't. It asterisk won't asterisk. I deserve the truth. I deserve to understand my own past. I deserve to have my feelings acknowledged, not dismissed. I'm torn. Do I push this? Do I keep confronting Jessica, even if it means alienating her, even if it hurts Dad? Do I try to force my family to see the truth, even if they don't want to? Or do I just walk away, let it go, pretend it never happened? I honestly don't know what to do. Reddit, any advice? I'm feeling lost and alone in all of this. Resolution, I've read through all the comments, and honestly, it's helped more than I can say. Knowing I'm not crazy, not overreacting, that other people see the validity of my feelings, it makes a difference. It gives me strength to face this. I decided against letting it go. I can't. It's too important, too fundamental to my understanding of myself and my family. But I also realized that forcing Jessica to admit the truth, to apologize, might not be the answer. She's clearly deeply invested in this narrative, and confronting her directly seems to only make her defensive and shut down. So, I took a different approach. I wrote Jessica a letter. Not an angry letter, not an accusatory one, but a letter expressing my feelings, my confusion, and my need for honesty. I told her about watching the videos, about how they contradicted the story we'd always been told. I told her how lonely I felt watching them, how much I realized Dad had been there for me, and how little she actually was. I didn't accuse her of lying. I didn't demand an apology. I simply stated my truth, my perspective, based on what I'd seen. I told her I understood she was young and grieving, that I didn't blame her for not being a perfect caregiver, but I also said that pretending she was that caregiver, perpetuating that myth for all these years. That hurt. That felt like a betrayal. I ended the letter by saying I needed space. Space to process, space to grieve, space to understand. I told her I wasn't cutting her out of my life, but that I couldn't continue our relationship as if nothing had changed. Not anymore. Not after seeing the truth. I mailed the letter and then I waited. Days went by, no call, no text, no email, just silence. Again, I started to think she wouldn't respond at all. Then last night my phone rang. It was Jessica. I answered, my heart pounding. Her voice was soft, subdued, nothing like the angry defensiveness from our last conversation. I got your letter, Shane, she said quietly. Okay, I replied, unsure what to expect. I watched the videos, she continued, her voice wavering. The ones you mentioned, the Christmas one, and a few others. And, I prompted gently, and, you're right, she admitted, the words barely audible. It wasn't how I remembered it. I wasn't there for you, not really. She didn't offer excuses, she didn't try to rationalize, she just acknowledged it, the truth. It was a small crack in the wall, but it was a crack nonetheless. We talked for a long time that night. It wasn't easy. There were silences, tears, moments of tension, but it was honest. For the first time in a long time, maybe ever, we were being truly honest with each other. She admitted she'd clung to the second mother narrative because it made her feel important, needed, like she was doing something meaningful in the face of so much loss. She admitted it was a way of coping, of justifying her own grief and guilt. She didn't fully apologize, not in so many words, but she acknowledged the hurt she'd caused, the false narrative she'd perpetuated, and she said softly, I'm sorry, Shane, for everything. It's not a neat resolution. It's not a happily ever after. Our relationship is still complicated, still fragile. There's a lot of healing to do for both of us, but it's a start. It's a step in the right direction. The truth is out in the open now, no longer buried under layers of lies and unspoken assumptions, and that, in itself, feels like a victory. I'm focusing on building a stronger, more honest relationship with Dad. We've been talking more, sharing memories of Mom, just connecting in a way we haven't in years. It's good, it's healing. As for Jessica, we're taking it slow, baby steps. But the wall feels a little less impenetrable now. The ice is starting to thaw. Maybe, just maybe, we can build something real, something honest, on the ruins of the lie. It won't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I feel a flicker of hope. And that's enough for now. My parents disowned me for being gay, but now they need my help to save their failing bakery after I built my own successful business. Will I help them? It's funny, isn't it? Life, I mean. The way it throws curveballs when you least expect them, especially when you think you've finally got some distance from the really bad pitches. I'm Ari, by the way, and for the last 10 years, I've built a life pretty far away from my parents, both geographically and emotionally. See, when I was 18, fresh out of high school and bright-eyed about starting college, I came out to my parents. Not the grand movie moment coming out, more of a hesitant, whispered confession over lukewarm coffee one Sunday morning. Their reaction wasn't exactly a parade, more like a slammed door and a one-way ticket out of their lives. It's not our way of life, Ari, my mom Lily had said, her voice tight, like she was physically restraining herself from saying something worse. My dad, Alexander, just stood there, stony-faced, like I'd announced I was joining a cult, not just myself. They gave me a week to pack up my life, my dreams of college nearby, and my sense of belonging in my own family. 18 and homeless, essentially. Luckily, a friend's family took me in, let me crash on their couch until I figured things out. I worked my butt off, community college first, then transferred, scholarships, loans, the whole grind. I made it. I built a life. A good life. a life where being gay wasn't a sin but just me. And now, 10 years later, radio silence broken, they're calling. Not for a birthday, not for Christmas, not even a "how are you doing" after a decade of nothing. No, they need me. My mom's voice, when I hesitantly picked up number unfamiliar, but something in my gut just knew was strained, desperate. Ari, we need your help. My first thought was, help with what? Moving furniture? Finding a good plumber? Did they finally need someone to program their newfangled smart TV? Nope, bigger, much bigger. The bakery, she choked out, it's going under. The bakery. Alexander's Artisan Breads, a small, family-run business that was practically their whole identity. My dad, the baker, my mom, the face of the business, the one who chatted with customers, managed the books, the whole shebang. It had been their dream, their passion, their everything. And now, apparently, it was crumbling. What happened? I asked, my voice flat, devoid of any real emotion. Years of hurt, years of being cut off, it does things to you. It builds walls, high, thick walls. Everything, she sighed, a long, weary sound that actually did something to me. A tiny crack in that wall, maybe. Competition, the economy, bad decisions. We don't know what to do, Ari. We're losing everything. And then came the kicker. The reason for the call, the real reason, buried under layers of strained politeness and forced humility. We heard from Emerson, actually. He said you're doing so well. In business, right? Marketing? Something like that? Emerson, my best friend from high school, the one whose family took me in. Loyal Emerson, bless his heart. He'd stayed in touch with my parents, kept them updated on my life, out of some misguided sense of family obligation, I guess. I hadn't asked him to, but that's Emerson. Always trying to mend fences, even ones that were practically buried under concrete. Yeah, I said, keeping it curt. Digital marketing. I run my own agency. Successful agency, actually, built from the ground up, just like I had to build my life. Irony, thy name is Ari. We were hoping. My mom's voice trailed off again, then rallied. We were hoping you could help us. Save the bakery. Save the bakery. The very business that had, in a way, been a silent partner in my exile. The business they'd poured everything into, seemingly more than their own son. The bakery that likely wouldn't have existed if they'd had to pay for my college instead of kicking me to the curb. A bitter laugh almost escaped me. Save the bakery, I echoed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. After everything, silence on the other end. A heavy, pregnant silence. Then a small, almost inaudible, please, Ari. And that's where I am now. Sitting in my apartment, overlooking the city I built my life in, phone clutched in my hand, staring at a blank screen. Save the bakery. The words keep echoing in my head, mocking, pleading, a bizarre request from the ghosts of my past. Part of me wants to hang up, block their number, and pretend this call never happened. Another, smaller, darker part of me wonders, what would happen if I just let it all crumble? Let Alexander's Artisan Breads become Alexander's Artisan Dust? Would that be justice? Or just petty revenge? Reddit, I'm lost. What do I even do with this? Okay, wow, didn't expect so many responses so fast. Thanks everyone for everything. Reading through your comments, it's like you guys are inside my head, pulling out all the messy, tangled thoughts I've been trying to ignore. A lot of you are saying, hell no, burn it down. Karma is a dish best served sourdough, and honestly, that's the part of me that's screaming the loudest right now. The hurt, the anger, it's still there, simmering under the surface after all these years. It's easy to say, walk away, and a big part of me really wants to. Just slam the door shut on this whole chapter and get back to my life. My good life. But then there are the other comments. The ones asking about my dad, about my mom, about the bakery itself. Some of you are saying maybe this is a chance, not to forgive, not to forget, but to understand, to finally have some kind of closure. And yeah, that resonates too, in a weird, uncomfortable way. A few of you asked about the bakery. It is a small-town institution. My dad started it years before I was born, practically built it with his own hands. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, where you go for birthday cakes, holiday pies, just a good, solid loaf of bread on a Tuesday. It's been part of the town's fabric for decades. And I know, deep down, that my parents, despite everything, poured their hearts and souls into it. It wasn't just a business for them. It was them. And my mom, Lily. Reading your comments, I realize I painted her as just Lily, the mom who kicked me out. But she's more than that, isn't she? Complicated, flawed human. She was always the softer parent, the one who read me bedtime stories, bandaged scraped knees, made my favorite cookies. She went along with my dad's decision. Yeah, and that's unforgivable in its own way, but Was it entirely her decision? Or was she just caught in his orbit, too afraid to break free? Emerson called me last night. He's a good egg, Emerson. He doesn't mince words either. Ari, he said, they screwed you over, no question, but you're not them, you're better than that. And you're damn good at what you do, if you can help them, even just a little. Maybe it's not about saving their business. Maybe it's about saving yourself from turning into them. That hit me hard, turning into them. Becoming bitter, resentful, defined by past hurts. Is that what I want? Is that what I've been fighting against all these years? Emerson also mentioned something else. He said he'd been helping out at the bakery part-time just to keep things afloat. He said it's bad, really bad, debts piling up, equipment breaking down, online reviews tanking. He said they're drowning and they don't even know how to swim. He painted a picture of my parents, not as the stony figures from my past, but as scared, lost, desperate. And that, I think, is what's making me hesitate. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, not even a burning desire to help them, but pity, maybe a flicker of something that feels almost like family. Despite everything they did, despite the walls I've built, they're still my parents, and they're facing something huge, something that could crush them. So, okay, maybe burn it down isn't the only option. Maybe there's another path, a path that doesn't involve forgiving and forgetting, but facing it, seeing it, understanding it, and maybe, just maybe, finding a way through it on my own terms. I'm thinking about it, seriously thinking. Maybe I'll drive back, just for a day, just to look at the bakery, and maybe talk to them. Not to save their business, not to be their savior, but to see what's left of them and of me. I'll keep you guys updated. Thanks again, Reddit. Seriously, okay, so I went back, drove out this morning. 3-hour drive, felt like 3 years. Pulled up in front of the bakery. Alexander's Artisan Breads. The sign was faded, paint peeling. The window displays, usually overflowing with tempting pastries and loaves, were sparse. A few sad-looking croissants, a half-empty basket of rolls. It looked tired, defeated, just like my mom's voice on the phone. Stepped inside. The smell, though, that hit me. The warm, comforting smell of yeast and baking bread. It was familiar, home, in a way that both warmed and twisted my gut. My mom was behind the counter, looking older, thinner, with shadows under her eyes I'd never seen before. She looked up, saw me, and her face just crumpled. Tears welled up, and she just reached out. Across the counter, her hand outstretched. I hesitated. For a beat, maybe two. Then I took it. Her hand was cold, trembling. She squeezed mine hard, no words, just that grip, and tears streaming down her face. My dad wasn't there. Mom said he was in the back, trying to fix the oven again. Oven trouble. Just another thing on the pile, I guess. She offered me coffee, and we sat at one of the small tables in the corner, the ones I used to do my homework at after school, surrounded by the comforting hum of the bakery, the clatter of trays, the murmur of customers. Except, it wasn't humming. It was quiet. Too quiet. The tables were mostly empty. The clatter was minimal. The murmur, non-existent. We talked, or rather she talked, and I listened. She told me everything. The competition, the rising costs of ingredients, the new supermarket bakery that opened just down the street, undercutting their prices. She talked about online orders drying up, catering gigs disappearing, bad reviews piling up online, complaining about stale bread, rude service, outdated decor. She talked about sleepless nights, mounting debts, creditors calling, the fear of losing everything. She talked about feeling helpless, hopeless, like they were drowning slowly, painfully. And then she apologized. Not for the business failing, not for the bad reviews, but for me, for what they did, for kicking me out, for not understanding, for everything. We were wrong, Ari, she said, her voice thick with emotion. So wrong, I see that now. We were so afraid, so stupid, we lost our son for nothing. She cried then, really cried, sobs racking her body, tears soaking her cheeks, and I sat there listening, watching, feeling something, not anger, not resentment, not even pity exactly, something softer, sadness maybe, a deep, aching sadness for everything that had been lost, for all the wasted years, for the broken family. She asked me again then, directly, Can you help us, Ari, please? I know we don't deserve it, but we're desperate. I looked around the bakery. At the faded sign, the sparse displays, the empty tables. At my mom, her face etched with worry and regret. At the ghost of a life I almost had, a life they almost let me have. I don't know, I said, honestly. I don't know if I can save the bakery, Mom, but I can look, I can see what's there, and I can try. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen, but hopeful, a flicker of something like hope. Really, I nodded slowly. Really, let me see the books. Let me look at your website. Let me just see, she smiled then. A small, weak smile, but a smile nonetheless. Thank you, Ari, she whispered. Thank you. And for the first time in 10 years, it didn't feel like a lie, it felt real. Maybe not a happy ending, not a perfect reconciliation, not a fairy tale reunion, but maybe a beginning, a chance to build something new out of the ashes of the old, a chance to see what happens next. I'm still scared, still unsure, still a million things, but I'm here. And I'm going to try, for them, for me, maybe it doesn't matter anymore. Maybe it's just time to bake something new. Update to come, I guess. Wish me luck. My stepfather left everything to me and my mother in his will and nothing to my older siblings, and I don't know how to live with it. It's still sinking in, honestly. My stepfather, Angelo, passed away last week. It was sudden, a heart attack. He wasn't that old, only in his early 60s, but he hadn't been taking the best care of himself lately. We knew it was coming eventually, in the sense that everyone knows death is inevitable, but not asterisk like this asterisk. Not yet. Angelo came into our lives when I was 10. My mom had been a single parent for years after my dad left, and then Angelo just fit. He was kind, funny, and he genuinely seemed to care about mom and about us kids. Us kids being me, Quinn, and my older siblings, Casey and Aiden. Casey and Aiden are moms from her first marriage, years before my dad. Angelo never tried to replace their dad, and I think that's why they accepted him so readily. He was just Angelo. He was there for school plays, soccer games, graduations. He helped Casey with car trouble, taught Aiden how to fix things around the house, and walked me through calculus when I was pulling my hair out in senior year. He wasn't just mom's husband. He was part of our family, asterisk my asterisk dad, in a way that felt real and earned, even if we never called him that. So when the lawyer called yesterday to schedule the reading of the will, it was just another step in the grieving process. Sad, necessary, and expected. Mom was quiet, Casey and Aiden were stoic, and I was just numb. We all met in the lawyer's office this morning, a stuffy, old place with leather chairs that smelled faintly of lemon polish and regret. Mr. Henderson, the lawyer, was a kindly older gentleman, all soft voice and gentle movements. He read through the usual legal jargon, the preamble, the clauses, all of it blurring together. And then he got to the part about the beneficiaries. Mom, of course, was named as the primary beneficiary, inheriting the house and most of Angelo's personal effects. That was expected. Then he listed me, Quinn, as inheriting the bulk of Angelo's investments and savings. That was surprising, but okay. I figured it was because I was the youngest, maybe Angelo thought I needed it more. And then Mr. Henderson paused. He cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and looked directly at Casey and Aiden. And that concludes the distribution of Mr. Rossi's assets. Silence hung thick in the air. Casey shifted in her seat, a frown etching itself onto her face. Aiden, ever the quieter one, just stared at Mr. Henderson, his expression unreadable. "Excuse me," Casey finally said, her voice tight, "but what about Aiden and me?" Mr. Henderson shuffled some papers, his brow furrowed. "I'm sorry, Miss Miller, Mr. Miller, but according to Mr. Rossi's will, you are not listed as beneficiaries." The air in the room felt like it had been sucked out. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I stared at Mr. Henderson, then at Casey and Aiden, then back at the lawyer, trying to process what I'd just heard. Not listed, Casey and Aiden, after everything. There must be some mistake, Mom said, her voice trembling. Angelo, he loved Casey and Aiden. They're his children. He's raised them since they were little. Mr. Henderson shook his head slowly. There's no mistake, Mrs. Rossi. The will is very clear. Only Mrs. Rossi and Mr. Quinn Rossi are named as beneficiaries. He gestured to the document in front of him. I can show you the relevant clauses if you wish. Casey stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back with a clatter. No, that's all right. We understand. Her voice was strained, brittle. Aiden followed suit, his face pale. Thank you, Mr. Henderson, he said quietly. For your time. They walked out of the office, stiff and silent, leaving Mom and me gaping after them. Mr. Henderson looked at us apologetically. I'm so sorry, he murmured. This is unusual in such circumstances. Mom was in shock. She kept repeating, but why? Why would he do that? I didn't have an answer. I didn't understand it either. It made no sense. Angelo wasn't like that. He wasn't petty or cruel. He always treated Casey and Aiden as his own. We were a family, or so I thought. Later that evening, after Mom had gone to bed, exhausted and heartbroken, I sat in the living room, staring at the wall. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. I kept replaying the scene in the lawyer's office, Casey's stricken face, Aiden's quiet devastation. And then I looked at the will again, the copy Mr. Henderson had given us. It was there in black and white. Angelo's signature at the bottom, solid and unmistakable. My name, Mom's name, and then nothing for Casey and Aiden. The words swam before my eyes. To my beloved son, Quinn Rossi, to my loving wife, Mom's name, and then a chillingly short sentence. For my stepchildren, Casey Miller and Aiden Miller, I leave nothing. Nothing, the phrase echoed in my head, nothing. After all those years, all that shared life, all the love and support, they were left with nothing. Stripped bare, as if their relationship with Angelo had been some kind of illusion, a performance. Suddenly, the inheritance felt tainted dirty. The money, the investments, they represented Angelo's life's work, his provision for his family, and he'd explicitly excluded two members of that family, the ones who had known him the longest, who had grown up with him. It felt wrong. Profoundly, sickeningly wrong. I knew I couldn't keep it. Not all of it, maybe not any of it. This wasn't right, this wasn't Angelo, or was it? Maybe I'd been wrong about him all these years. Maybe beneath the surface of the kind, funny stepfather, there had always been this cold, calculated exclusion based on blood, on a technicality of not being his. I had to talk to Casey and Aiden. I had to see how they were doing, what they were thinking. I grabbed my phone and texted them both. Asterisk, hey, can we talk? Whenever you're up for it. Asterisk, Casey texted back almost immediately. Asterisk, don't, just don't, please. Asterisk, Aiden's reply was even shorter. Asterisk, leave it, Quinn. Asterisk, but I couldn't leave it. It was eating me up inside. This couldn't be the end of it. Not for our family. The next day, I ignored Casey and Aiden's texts and drove over to Casey's apartment. She lived in a small, cluttered place downtown, filled with books and art supplies. When I knocked, she opened the door a crack, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. Quinn, I told you not to, she said, her voice low and choked. Casey, please, let me in, we need to talk about this. She hesitated for a moment, then sighed and opened the door wider. I stepped inside. The air in the apartment felt heavy, thick with unspoken emotions. She gestured for me to sit on the worn couch, and she perched on the edge of an armchair, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. I don't want to talk about it, she mumbled, staring at the floor. I know, I said gently, but we have to. This isn't right, Casey. What Angelo did, it's not fair. She finally looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of pain and anger. Fair? What's fair got to do with anything? Life isn't fair, Quinn. We learned that a long time ago, didn't we? Her voice cracked on the last word. I knew she was talking about our dad, about the hole his absence had left in our lives. And now, this. Another loss, another rejection from the man who had stepped into that void, who we had trusted to be there for us. But this is different, I argued. This is about Angelo, about what he did. He can't just erase you and Aiden from his life, from his will, like you never mattered. Casey shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. Maybe we didn't matter, Quinn. Not really. Not enough to be his blood right. The words were laced with sarcasm, but underneath, I heard the raw hurt, the deep-seated feeling of being unwanted, unvalued. That's not true, I insisted. He loved you guys, I know he did. Did he? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Did he really? Or did he just tolerate us? Because we came with Mom? Because he had to? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Doubt, cold and sharp, began to creep into my mind. Had Angelo's affection for Casey and Aiden been conditional all along? Had it been a performance, a role he played, but never truly felt in his heart? No, I said, trying to sound more certain than I felt. No, that's not true. I know Angelo loved you both. He showed it all the time. But even as I said the words, I heard the tremor of uncertainty in my own voice. Casey just looked at me, her eyes filled with a sadness that went deeper than just grief for Angelo. It was a sadness that spoke of years of unspoken questions, of subtle distances, of always feeling like stepchildren, outsiders looking in. Maybe, she said softly, maybe it's just easier to accept that we never really were his family. That's what he showed us in the end, didn't he? I left Casey's apartment feeling lost and confused. The easy answers I'd clung to were crumbling, replaced by a messy, uncomfortable truth. Angelo's will wasn't just a legal document, it was a statement. A final, devastating statement about how he saw his family and where Casey and Aiden fit into it, or didn't fit. Later that week, I finally managed to catch Aiden at his workshop. He was a carpenter, his hands calloused and strong, his workshop filled with the scent of sawdust and varnish. He was sanding a piece of wood when I walked in, his brow furrowed in concentration. He stopped when he saw me, setting the wood and sandpaper down on a workbench. "Quinn," he said, his voice flat, "I told you to leave it. I can't, Aiden, not like this. I can't just accept it." He sighed, running a hand through his hair, leaving a trail of sawdust in its wake. "What do you want me to do, Quinn? Sue him from beyond the grave? Fight Mom? What good would it do?" "It's not about fighting," I said. "It's about making things right. This isn't fair to you and Casey. You deserve something. More than nothing." Aiden shrugged, turning back to the workbench and picking up the sandpaper again, his movements rougher now. "Deserve? Who deserves anything? We got what we got, Quinn. That's it. But I'm getting everything," I said, my voice rising in frustration. "That's the point, Aiden. It's all going to me and Mom, and you and Casey are left with nothing. Don't you see how wrong that is?" He finally stopped sanding, turning to face me, his expression weary. "Look, Quinn, I appreciate it. I do, but I don't want your pity. I don't want your charity. I don't need your money." "It's not charity," I argued. "It's justice. It's what Angelo should have done, and since he didn't," I trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. Aiden studied me for a long moment, his gaze intense. "And what? What are you going to do, Quinn? Give us your inheritance? Split it up? Is that your grand plan?" He sounded skeptical, almost mocking. "Maybe," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Maybe that's exactly what I'm going to do." He stared at me, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "You wouldn't?" "Yes, I would," I said, meeting his gaze. "I have to. I can't live with this, Aiden, not knowing that you and Casey were a race like this. It's not right, and I'm not going to be a part of it." Aiden remained silent for a long moment, then slowly, a small smile touched his lips. It wasn't a happy smile, more like a sad, rueful acknowledgement. "You always were the stubborn one, Quinn," he said softly. And in that moment, I knew I had made my decision. The money, the investments, the future Angelo had planned for me alone. It wasn't worth the cost of my family. Casey and Aiden were my siblings. They were family, blood or not. And I wasn't going to let Angelo's will tear us apart any further. The logistics were complicated, of course. Mr. Henderson was surprised, to say the least, when I told him my intentions. He advised against it, warned me about the legal ramifications, the tax implications, all the practical reasons why it was a bad idea. But I was firm. This wasn't about logic or practicality, it was about right and wrong. Mom, when I told her, was initially horrified. "Quinn, no. Angelo wanted you to have that money. It's yours. You deserve it." "Mom, how can I deserve it when Casey and Aiden get nothing?" I asked her, my voice pleading. "How can I live with that, knowing that Angelo deliberately excluded them, and I just accepted it?" She sighed, running a hand through her hair, her eyes filled with a weariness that mirrored my own. "I don't know, Quinn," she admitted. "I just don't understand any of this." But slowly, as I explained my reasoning, my need to make things right, to heal the rift that Angelo's will had created, she began to understand. And eventually, she gave me her blessing, albeit a reluctant one. Splitting the inheritance wasn't simple. There were legal hurdles, paperwork, and a lot of complicated financial maneuvering. But with Mr. Henderson's reluctant help and a lot of patience, we managed it. Casey and Aiden were both stunned when I presented them with the checks. Casey cried, her tough exterior finally cracking. Aiden, ever stoic, just nodded, a rare tear glistening in his eye. "Quinn," Casey said, her voice thick with emotion, "you didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did," I said, squeezing her hand. "We're family, Casey, and family takes care of each other. Always." The money didn't solve everything, of course. It didn't bring Angelo back or erase the hurt his will had caused. But it was a start. It was a gesture, a promise, a way of saying that even in the face of loss and confusion, family, real family, still mattered. And that some bonds, the ones forged not in blood but in shared life and love, were stronger than any piece of paper, any legal document, any will. We were still a family, and we would get through this together.